Now, starting calisthenics, bodyweight strength, handstands at any age can be super confusing, knowing what exercises you should do, what progressions you should be working, and what skills you should be working towards. So today I'm going to take you through the beginner essentials that I think you should be working if you're new to this style of training, if you've hit some blocks in your current training and you just can't unlock that skill. And this is for any age, but especially for you guys and girls that are over 40, because that's where we start to struggle more and more with postural imbalances, restrictions, and bad habits. So I'm going to cover the basic skills that you should be doing or should be able to do that are going to be the foundation of the cool skills. And I'm going to run through the key mobility movements that we should be doing to help make the movements more efficient and basically unlock harder skills without having to put in crazy amounts of strength. Number one, we need to look at overhead mobility. So most people are stuck in this position. We have a rounded back, we have tight pecs, we have tight lats, and we look like this. So when we take that and try and put our hands above our head, we get this or this. So, or you might get your hands in a good position, but you're compensating now at the hips because you don't have the range to do it. So I can correct the hips and the arms go down, or if I take the arms above my head, my hips change. And that's really seen in any movement where the hands go above our head. Even when we're up in this position or up in this position, we start to run into restrictions and issues just holding a position. So the quickest and easiest way to work on this for most people is going to be a passive hang. Now with the passive hang, we want to have a full grip on the bar, ideally with hands shoulder width apart, and then we're going to try and hang. Now if that's impossible to hang in that position, we might actually need to take the hands a little bit wider because our mobility when we go overhead might force us into this position. Now the goal will be to bring the biceps by the ears and even be closer than that and hang in that position. But if you feel like you can't hang there and it looks more like this, then we need to find a comfortable position for you at the moment. Now, if conditioning is an issue and we can't hang for any amount of time, we can use a slight toe assist, but same setup, so hands shoulder width apart or roughly where you can feel comfortable in the position, and then go into your full passive hang position, so not holding up in any active way at all, making sure you've got that full grip of the bar, and then just have tiptoes on the floor if you need to. Ideally, we'll be without, and we just hang in that position. Now you can see my knees are slightly bent and my hips are slightly closed because I can touch the floor here. Ideally you'd have a setup where you can hang fully with a straight body and not be able to touch the floor, but just work with the variation that fits your current setup. Now the two reasons you shouldn't hang, number one, you get pain. So if you have pain in the position, some people can get rid of the pain just by moving up actively slightly. If that's the case, then cool, go ahead. But if you have pain anywhere there, then we need to find something else to do to replace the hanging until we can work you up to being able to hang. And the other reason you shouldn't be hanging is if you've got nowhere to hang. So if I put in someone's program, I want them to hang every day, but they've got nowhere to hang at home and they can only go to the gym twice a week, I want them to do something on a daily basis to open that up. So hang when you can, and when you can't, find an alternative to the hang that you can do anywhere. So if you've got a foam roller or a yoga block, you can lay over that. And there's lots of different variations we can do. Just make sure that you're trying to target where the roller is or where the block is, and we're not arching through the low back or compensating too much in the neck. Now another big area of the body that gets in the way of a lot of our skills and make things much harder is the hips. So a lot of people are really tight in the hip position. We struggle to touch our toes. We struggle to sit in a squat, and going into any sort of straddle position is near on impossible. So we need to find mobility movements that hit those three key areas. Now the lunge position is a fantastic way to start to open up these positions in the hip flexors, in the hamstring, and in the quads. So spending time in different lunge positions is going to be really good for you, and you can start to work towards both single leg versions and double leg versions of those stretches that are going to make things easier when we come to strength movements that require flexibility to make more efficient positions. Now there's lots of different variations of movements that get into the hips in different directions, and you need to find the ones that you enjoy and that you see value in, but make sure they are addressing your weak areas and slowly increasing your ranges so you can unlock the skills that you're aiming towards. Now another key area that we need to focus on is creating strength and control in the scapula, in the shoulder blades. Having the ability to push up to protraction is essential for things like planches. So understanding and being able to feel and move through protraction and retraction with control and conditioning is so important. So number one, just make sure we have the mobility first. So go on your knees, externally rotate the hands slightly and push up as hard as you can for your shoulder blades. You should be able to push there where you can't see your shoulder blades. If it feels like you can't go all the way up, video yourself or get someone to have a look to see whether you can see your shoulder blades in that position. Ideally, when you're up in this protracted hold, you shouldn't see your shoulder blades there and you should be able to lean forwards a little bit. If you can't, we need to work that mobility, so that thoracic mobility over the foam roller. The hanging is going to help, but also these scapular push-ups where we're going between retraction and protraction with straight arms. If it's easy, do the same thing on your toes, but make sure that you're getting that full protraction at the top. As well as the protraction and retraction, we need to have the elevation and depression of the shoulder blades when we're in a hanging position and when we're in a inverted position, so we can move through this range of motion. So I'm trying to go up and down now with straight arms from a passive hang to an active hang without arching the body too far back and forth. Once we've got that control, we can up the ante a little bit more and go into retraction and depression of the shoulder blades at the same time. And that's what we do at the top of a chin up. So I'm going to go into this in a straight arm position here, and then I'm going to pull my shoulder blades back, but also down at the same time. And that means I can arch through there. So it's like an up dog position in yoga. So my shoulder blades are pulled down and back together, and then I'm going to go back to my active position. So having that control of going in this position, pulling the shoulder blades back and down, open the chest is really important. The top of our chin up, the start of the transition on the muscle up, and in all of the other strength movements. Then we can start looking at the strength skills themselves. So if we can use P-bars, we can use rings, we can use boxes for this one. And if we're flexible enough, we can even do it on the floor. So the idea is that we're going to go into the support position. So the support position is really important by itself, but we can combine the L-sit into it as well if we're strong enough in the support. So a support position is when we just hold ourselves in this position. So my arms are pushed into my side, I'm not moving, I'm trying to bring the shoulders back and down and open the chest in that position. So I'm there. What we don't want to be is in that hunched position like that. We want to push up and out. Now, if that's very, very challenging, you can make it easier by having toes on the floor. If it's easy to hold, so we can progress it by going into an L-sit position. So I'm just bringing the knees up. I'm trying to keep my torso upright. And then if I have more flexibility, I can start to take the legs out in front of me. And obviously there's the degrees of that in between. It can be done on boxes, again with bent legs or straight legs. We could even go down onto the floor. But this one demands to have the straight pike leg position as a prerequisite, because you can't bend the legs on the floor. You can bend them slightly, but realistically you need to be able to sit in this position to be able to push up to that position. So a good goal with those is to get the support position and the L-sit position up to around 20 to 30 seconds. And you can work 3 to 5 sets of 5 to 10 second holds to build that up. For those of you that are more conditioned in that position, you can up the ante again by going onto rings. Now the push-up is another great tool that we can start to progress and make harder and harder, or we can fill any gaps. So there's two parts of the push-up that we can really focus on. So I'm going to externally rotate the hands. I'm going to go into the top of the push-up. So obviously with this position, we don't want to be collapsed into an ugly position like this, where stuff's going to get dumped into the low back. I want to push up, make sure I'm in a strong position. Now I'm going to actually round the upper back, so go into that protracted position. And then because my hands are externally rotated, that allows me to take the shoulders forward slightly. So I'm starting to go towards a planche lean position. So again, building time in this protracted position. If it's easy, turn the toes over and I can just keep going there. Just be careful with this one that the hips don't come up in the air. Make sure all the energy is pushed up about the rounded upper back into that scapular position. And then we can do the opposite at the bottom. So I'm going to go down into a bottom of a push-up. So again, have those hands externally rotated. I'm going to go all the way down and have my chin and my chest super close to the floor, but I'm not touching anyway. I can move around down there. So building time and conditioning in this position is also really important. And if it's easy, we can progress it to the bottom of the dip position. Now I can be in this position, which is a bit like a bent arm planche position, or I can go more of the bottom of the dip here, which is going to give a bit more of a shoulder stretch, but both are really important. Now a common gap to fill and a really good one to practice is the top of the chin up position. Now this could be done with toe assist if you need to. It can be done on rings, so I can jump up here and hold in this position, or it can be done on a bar. But basically we just want to be able to hold this position for time. Now if you're working towards muscle ups and things, this could change into a false grip hold, but whichever variation you're doing, you just need to be able to hold there for time. So start with the toe assist if you need to, just holding that retracted, depressed scapular position with ideally your chest touching the rings, the bar, or just making sure that your hands are touching your chest at the top. Now, starting to build control and understanding of arm balance positions is really, really important. That's going to carry us over to things like handstand push-up positions, planche positions, and harder movements, but making sure you understand that basic setup and positioning that creates a balanced, efficient position is going to make all of these movements much, much easier. And the easiest way to play around with that is something like the crow or the frog, where I have my knees on my elbows. I find the middle of my balance, which allows me to sit here for time, and then I can start to play with the window of balance and explore the position and understand that relationship between the shoulders and the hips moving. Now, I'd normally suggest people either start in the crow position, or if that's really comfortable, going into the shoulder stand, which is very similar to the crow. The elbows come into the side, the torso touches the upper arms. I find a balanced position and then I hold there. And the cool thing about the shoulder stand is you can really understand that connection of the shoulder and the hip. So as the shoulder comes up, the hips come down, and I can transition around to an L sit and then go back again. So for some people, you'll be able to combine these movements together and you don't have to train them all individually. And that's where the more common movements can come in. So I can do a chin up where I'm practicing a passive hang at the bottom. I'm coming up to the top position where I've got my hold, and then I come back down again to the passive hang, and I do that for repetitions. So if you have all the components, you can just start training the chin ups itself, focusing on that top position, focusing on that bottom position. We can do the same for the dip or the push up, where we're hanging out in that bottom position, pushing up to that top support. I could even add an L sit in at the top for repetitions. And for straight arm, we can work up to something like a skin the cat and be able to pull through from a passive hang through to a German hang and back again with control. But most people, when they're starting, are going to need to break down those movements and work on specific components. So the top position, the scapular mobility, or wherever the weakness is, and then integrate it back into the movements. So the goal is to have the option. If you need to move the body individually and move each segment by itself, to roll through the muscle up, to roll down from a press handstand, or to keep the torso close to the legs in a pistol squat, we need to have that available and ready to go. But we also need to be able to make the body one segment, which allows us to go into a position like a handstand and keep something fixed. So if I fix my toes to my head and I come down, it's gonna make things like handstand push-ups much easier, as opposed to my body trying to move all over the place and making it now on impossible to balance. So the easiest way to practice that is to go into something like a bodyline position or a hollow body hold, where I'm making one segment from my feet to my shoulders by going into slight flexion. So pushing my low back into the floor. Now the reason we want to train flexion is our body tends to collapse into extension, especially into a handstand. So trying to create the body one segment like this is going to make it easier to stay as one piece and get the legs to be connected to the torso. I can add the arms in as well if I want to make it really horrible. Or I could practice the same thing. And this is great, obviously, if your goal is handstands, is to build time in this position. So again, the same thing. My hands are talking to my feet and I'm trying to stop myself collapsing. I want to be in this position for time. And I want to be holding these things, the static positions, for 20, 30, the handstand even up to 60 seconds. And ideally get to the point where you can hold a conversation there. Now it is a bit confusing how you pull this together into some sort of program for yourself. You could just self-assess, go through everything and find your gaps. Or I have a specific program for this in my app. Link is down in the description. And the app allows you to swap out progressions and regressions of each movement to find the ideal one for you. And it has all the sets and reps in there. Let me know if you have any questions with this one down in the comments, and I'll speak to you next time. Thanks, guys.